And yeah, we can start. So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining this lunchtime event on professional qualification for civil engineers, which was organized by Young Seced. Today we have invited Alison Jones from the ICE and Mark Scorer from Atkins to discuss about different roads to chartership and get some practical advice for individuals working in the field of dynamics. But before we get started, please let me go through a few housekeeping rules. Please can everyone keep their videos off and microphones on mute during the event. We will have a Q&A session at the end, but please feel free to type your questions in the chat at any point. Please note that the seminar is recorded and will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. Therefore, by dialing into this event, you consent that any views or opinions you share being made public. And just to continue from Alison's request, it would be good if you can type your IC membership number at the chat. Otherwise, we won't be able to know who joined because we do not record the participants list. So that was the boring stuff. Going back to the event itself, in this lunchtime seminar, our speakers will talk to us about the ICE Chartership and give us some practical advice. Alison from the perspective of an MDO and Mark as SEE. Alison is a chartered engineer who worked for the last 18 months as a membership development officer for the ICE. Alison began her career working with London Underground and has more lately worked for a large consultancy. She was a DE and a CE for many years and is an ICE reviewer for EngTech, iEng and CEng. Mark is a chief engineer who is Atkins Ground Engineering's discipline lead for seismic geotechnics. He has 15 years experience working on and managing a range of sensitive projects in the nuclear, defense, oil and gas, dams and building development sectors, both in the UK and internationally. Mark is a second committee member and helped establish their young members group. He is also a qualified urban search and rescue engineer with the UK charity SARAID and their engineering training and international development officer. Mark has been a DE and a CE now for several years, providing support to many young engineers during their chartership journey. I think we are all very grateful to have you, Alison and Mark, here with us today. So without further delay, I'll hand over to Alison.
Thank you, Tina. And Mark, good to see you because we haven't met, have we? Right, I will turn my video off and start sharing my slides, okay?
Perfect. Many thanks, Alison.
Okay.
Indeed, you covered a number of different items related to the chartership, and thanks a lot for all the advice for academics. I think it's not very often that we see specific guidance for people from academia, so I'm sure our audience found that of interest.
Just one more thing to say on that. One of my colleagues who was an academic himself does run career appraisal workshops for academics. So if you want more information about that, I think he does one a year and we might be in the middle of one, but there might be another one. So do email me specifically on that if that's of interest. Sorry, Tina, I'll shut up now.
Definitely, we will do. Thanks a lot. Before we give the floor to Mark, a reminder to our audience, please feel free to type your questions in the chat and we will address them soon after Mark's talk. Mark, over to you.
Thanks so much, Tina, and thank you, Alison. Really detailed and useful. I haven't got quite as many slides. I've gone the other way, and I've only got a few to share, but hopefully it's a few interesting points to which dovetail well with Alison's slides, and we can hopefully give some more tips and advice that take on board and complement what Alison has already presented. So hopefully you can all see the presentation there.
Yep.
And we'll get straight into it. We appreciate whether it's in academia or whether it's early career professionals, there's a lot going on in people's lives. It might be focus on a new job, there might be relocation, meeting new friends and people, and so we appreciate that. But what I would say is to start early and to make a plan for whatever it is that you're doing, whichever route you're going through. Make a plan and to manage it like a project. And keep records. If you break it down into smaller tasks, it becomes a lot more manageable, and you can manage the chartership process as opposed to it managing yourself. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming. There's a lot of information that Alison's just shared with you all. There's a lot of tasks and there's a lot of attributes and things to tick off. If you look at it as a whole piece, it does seem quite daunting. But if you do break it down and keep records, each project you do, treat them individually, keep records, try and break down the individual attributes and tick them off as you go along. And sometimes, especially with the records, people often talk to me and say, oh, well, I haven't really done that, I haven't really done that. And then you just ask somebody to talk through what they've done on the most recent project. And you find that they've actually ticked off a lot more than they thought they had, and sometimes underestimate some of the tasks that they do on a project or they take for granted as not being relevant. So I'd always say keep the records. It helps for when you look back in the future, and always refer back to the attributes and the examples that Alison's given as to what constitutes that level of experience, because a lot of the time people do underestimate the tasks that they've done. Be realistic in the goals and the deadlines that you set for yourself. Don't give yourself a hard time and an unrealistic deadline. Appreciate the facts that people do have lives as well. You've got holidays to plan, you might have moving house, you might have life events, getting married, things like that, or challenges. And it's okay to recognize them. You don't have to rush through chartership in 3 years. It's a long time. Some people have achieved it in a smaller time frame as that, but that is not the norm. Recognize that it might take 5 or 6 years or longer, and appreciate that this is your career. It's not something that once completed, that's the end of it. It's just part of the journey and part of the continued professional development throughout your career. So again, set realistic goals and don't be too hard on yourself. Don't focus on the technical. It might seem sort of counterintuitive because that's typically what everyone is here, or the majority are here to do. There's a lot of very experienced people, whether it's through masters, through PhDs. But from my point of view, especially with specialisms like seismic or dynamics, the technical attributes I've found typically look after themselves. People are very good at doing the technical side of things, and it comes naturally almost because that's their day job, if you like, and that will come naturally. So try from a very early stage to take a wider holistic view of the whole project. Sometimes it's easier said than done, but for early careers, do take an interest in the wider project. Understand where you fit in and where your little package of work fits in. Be inquisitive. Find out what else is going on in the project, either upstream or downstream, and really try to understand where you fit in. Take on non-dynamic roles as such. Don't be afraid to think, okay, well, this is my specialism. If I take on other tasks or if I get involved in other things, I'll get dragged away from it. If you have that specialism, I've found that it'll always be there. You'll always get retained on that. And it might be what you're most interested in doing, but it doesn't hurt. It certainly strengthens you, I think, as a person, and your skill set to broaden your horizons and your experience. You might find other things that you excel at, that you know that you're not good at, or that you gives you an understanding in the project and lets you develop as an engineer in your career. The bottom is to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask project managers and to ask other people working on different packages of the work, just to talk you through what they are doing, how your work fits in, how it might be related, or it might be completely unrelated, but it might give you an appreciation of what else is going on in the wider picture, and an understanding. By offering support there, sometimes it can be difficult to get direct experience in certain other areas, for example, in project management. But there are ways that you can take the initiative and speak to the project manager. They're often very busy, but always looking for help or support. So if you were to offer, say, can I be your assistant? Can I offer some draft tasks where I can I track the spend, for example? Let me do that for a couple of weeks, track the spend on the project. Let me draft the client weekly or monthly reports for you. They'll always be more than willing, I've found, to let people get involved, add a bit of a stretch target to what they're doing, and it lets you build up and help develop your other attributes. Not necessarily having a direct role initially, but then you'll have some of that experience. So if those other roles then come up, you'll already be well placed and have experience of doing things like that. Moving on. Utilize your Ds and SCEs. Appreciate that they're often busy people. Sometimes it can be like, well, I don't want to bother them about things, but typically your Ds and SCEs, they're voluntary positions. And so there's people that want to share their knowledge and want to support. They enjoy helping to develop their colleagues. And so really tap into them. It doesn't have to be once every 3 months or once a year. Feel free to reach out and use their knowledge. Seek out mentors as well, inside your company, inside professional networks, and look to expand outside the area of expertise that you have, because it might be more comfortable speaking to those within your area of expertise and in dynamics and the technical knowledge base. It's always easier talking about what you know. But don't be afraid to reach out to mentors outside that and to learn about the financial things, the commercial things, the contractual sides of things. Do take responsibility and be proactive. It's something that we go through academia, university, and then sometimes, okay, now we've got a job or further in education in academia, and we sort of sit down and sit back a bit. Okay, now we've got a job, we're told what to do or what's required of us. But Chartership is very much a personal responsibility, and you really need to drive it forward. There's lots of support out there and people willing to do that, but only you can really take that responsibility and drive that forward. So do go out of your way to be proactive. Independent learning, self-study. We've already mentioned the UN SDGs. Look into the government white papers, the strategies on net zero, the real hot topics for engineering in the future, and where you want to go and how you want to incorporate that into the day job as such and what you do within your area of specialism. Get involved with professional bodies, whether that be the societies of the ICE, things like seced, whether it be EFIT, go on missions, volunteer with charities. There's lots out there, Engineering Without Borders, things you can do to give back. SARAID, there's lots you can do. So don't be afraid to get involved in that and extracurricular voluntary work. Sometimes companies provide volunteer days, you can use that, and it all helps. And you'd be surprised what attributes you can use to tick those off as well. And then my final one is just to say things change. As I say, life can often get in the way. So monitor your progress. Don't be afraid to re-baseline your project plan, set deadlines, but again, don't be too hard on yourself. Set realistic deadlines and work towards it. And if you break it down in manageable tasks, then I think it's quite clear and it's quite straightforward to remember that you're not trying to trick anybody or convince them of anything you're not readily available and prepared to do, which is to pass your professional review. You should be doing that as your day job. You're comfortable. It shouldn't be something over the top and should be a real difficulty for you to demonstrate. So be confident in your own ability and enjoy what you're doing. And that's pretty much what I had to just to share with you, and keep it short and sweet, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark, for sharing your experience with us. I found your advice very practical and to the point, so I'm sure the audience enjoyed. Before we proceed with the Q&A session, I would like to thank, of course, both our speakers, Alison and Mark, for being with us today, and of course, taking the time to help young engineers on their journey to chartership. So many thanks from Young Second. I'll open up the floor to questions. I don't see any on the chat, so please feel free to type, or alternatively, you can raise a hand. You can find that at the top part of your screen, and then you can come off mute to ask it. Okay, I just saw the first question from Luca. Thanks for the tips. What's the most suitable IC membership for someone who is working on the EU recognition route application and has some experience already?
So, Luca, do you want to unmute? Can you unmute? We can.
Hi, yeah.
Hi there, Luca. So you're already working on your application, are you, for that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so if you've got the academic base, have you had that sort of confirmed, Luca, that you've got CN eligibility, or it might be IN?
Yes.
Okay, so there's two things you can do. You can just go for a review as normal, like everyone else does, and there's nothing stopping you doing that. Or you can choose to continue with the EU recognition route, which is the important thing. Whichever route you take, everything's about the attributes, and it's about having enough good examples that demonstrate you're working or you have worked at chartered engineer level. So that's the key. Was that okay, or was there another specific question about it, Luca?
What I meant was basically there are different types of memberships. There is the graduate one and some others. So what do you think is the most suitable for someone who is taking this route?
Yeah, well, if you're working on the EU recognition route, then you're aiming to become a chartered member. So that's what you'll get once you've gone through that route. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hope I've got the question there okay. Tips on preparing for the communication task. Go through, so here go through the published list. Let me just turn to it in my printout. There's about, I haven't counted them all, 15 different scenarios. Go through them all, do your homework on them, be prepared to answer a question on any of those. You're not expected to be a technical expert on any of them, but you are expected to have a sort of broad, holistic knowledge and something to say about those. So you've got some background, but then it's responding in the way that the format that's been asked of you. There are events. If the penultimate slide I had, there are discussion groups like there used to be for the old written exercise. So my other tip is to join up with those. And when I send the slides to Tina, I'll have all those links, or the ones that are in the diary, for those. So I would recommend that you join those just to get into the swing of it. The most important thing is doing what they ask you to do. People rarely used to fail. We haven't got enough data on this yet because it's so new. People rarely used to fail on the old written exercise. Mostly if they did, it was because they hadn't answered the question. So that's your most important thing there.
Next question comes from Olga. Says, hello from Greece and many thanks. In the post-COVID era, what exactly are the in-person requirements entailing travel, interview, as well as written task?
Right. I mean, everything's still really being done online. So I wouldn't worry about in-person stuff and travel. Teams has worked really well since lockdown hit 2 years ago, and that's going to continue. There's just a few in-person review sessions. I think it's Manchester, Edinburgh, Cardiff. So just one day in each, just as for people who need it or really want it for other reasons. But for the most part, we're sticking with Teams and it's working well. Hope that's okay. Sorry, Tina, another thing you did ask me, which I meant to say on one of my slides, you asked me about statistics on pass rate and all the rest of it. I didn't quite, we don't have access to the statistics you specifically asked, because you asked me about any trends or patterns. What I can tell you is that it's around 75% pass rate, plus or minus 3%. And actually, going back to what Mark said, and thanks for what you said, Mark, it really dovetailed well with my vast array of slides and facts, but it was spot on. It's really important that that you understand that every attribute has an equal weighting. Okay. I think it used to be that most people failed on the technical attribute. Having said that, but really just focus on all of them. They're all important. And if you're not at the right level on any one of the 7, then you won't get through. So that's really important. And that's just building on what Mark said.
Great, thank you, Alison. You even covered that one.
Yes.
It was mostly a detail. I was interested in knowing that. So many thanks.
Okay.
Next question is, hi, I'm already on a training program, thus I have 9 attributes. Do I still have the communication task and 5,000 word report?
Yes, depending on what type of review you're doing. If you're doing iEng or CEng, a straight iEng or CEng, it's 5,000 words. If you were told it was 3,000 words, then you might already have iEng and you're doing the progressive route. Do you want to unmute? Because there's so many what ifs there. Can you unmute, Sabir?
Hello? Yep.
Hi there. Hi.
Yeah.
So is that the case? Are you doing the progressive route? Do you already have iEng?
I started iEng at my last company, but I changed company and I'm doing CEng now.
So
But
you haven't.
I didn't finish the iEng, no.
Right. Then it's a 5,000 word report. So I'm not sure if you're doing CEng and you haven't already got iEng, it's 5,000 words.
Okay, perfect.
All right. That was easy then.
Thank
Thank you.
I think I've addressed the next one from Navina for the recording, but I do have a few more questions. These came from people who could not join the session today. So the first one is from Alison, and the question is, how does the UK chartership relate to the Australian one? Can an engineer become chartered in Australia if she is chartered in the UK?
Yes, there is mutual recognition with some other countries. Australia is one of them. I think I'm right. I haven't got it in front of me. I'm pretty sure it's Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, South Africa, and another one. My mind's gone blank. Hong Kong. So there is a mutual recognition scheme. So if you're chartered, it's a slightly different process to get that mutual recognition, a bit like the EEA and Swiss stuff I've been talking about. It's all on the website. So if you just put in, or you can Google actually, ICE mutual recognition, then that will come up. Okay.
Perfect. And I have one question both for Mark and Alison that says, seismic specialists often get involved in many different projects rather than one big project for years. Is this a drawback? Do reviewers expect to see individuals covering all attributes in one project?
Shall I start? Do you want to start, Mark? You haven't.
Yeah, so I did give you a break of talking at it. My immediate response would be definitely no. That's not the case at all. It's there are pros and cons. From some people are able to tick off multiple attributes from just one single project, but that's more of a rarity, I'd suggest. Then it's more demonstrating the skills, whatever project they've been demonstrated on, and it's achieving those attributes. Whether it's on multiple different projects or one large one. So no, if people are demonstrating the level that's necessary, then my response to that would be absolutely not. Don't worry about that. But have a wider appreciation, as I mentioned, of the multiple projects that you're on. it might be a lot more, but there can be seen as a great opportunity. You've got an opportunity to learn about lots and lots of different projects, and they're all going to be different. And so there's a great source of information that you can learn from, as opposed to just on one project. But then if it is on one project, it's great. It'll be a massive project. There's lots of opportunities there. So I would say no, don't worry. But Alison might have a different view on that.
No,
hopefully.
I absolutely don't. I have the same view. What I would say is what you may have heard, I've forgotten who asked the question now. What you may have heard in the past is that when you write your 5,000 report, write 1 or 2 projects. And often I get asked this by geotechnical engineers, actually, because they're involved in giving specialist advice on lots and lots of projects. So for one of your maybe 2 projects, you could have a portfolio of smaller projects that you can just pick out little bits of evidence to demonstrate that you've been working at Eng level and you've had those sort of roles and responsibilities. The only reason we don't want you to write about 10 different projects is that you won't have enough words once you've set the scene for every project that you're describing. You won't have enough words left for the really important bit, which is what you did. But absolutely. And I think I just want to go back on something else that Mark said, which was really, really true. Just most people that come to me, exactly what you said, Mark, that think they haven't got experience, it's only because they haven't been thinking with an attribute hat on, if you like, with an attribute mindset, because no one goes into work thinking, right, I'm going to do a bit of attribute 1 today, backed up by a bit of attribute 5. No one thinks like that, do they? But when you really start analysing, look at the attributes, be mindful of them, I promise you'll find you're really further through those than you think. I'm sure you agree, Mark. It's people just not thinking in that way, and it's just a new way of thinking that you have to do to get through this process.
Yeah, and sometimes it can just be as simple as talking through what you've been doing with your DE, with a mentor or somebody, or just a colleague, and then you find actually you can then map it to the attributes and tick them all off. But yeah, don't undersell yourself, and it's just a way of looking at things.
I've just seen a question there about sponsors. I mean, have a look in the guidance, Ryan, but your leads, you have to have 2 sponsors. Your lead sponsor must be, well, if you're applying for CEng, MICE themselves. The second sponsor may be that, or they may be CEng with another of the professional engineering institutions. And there's a list of those that are all part of the Engineering Council. There's a list of that in the guidance. Mark, do you want to take that next question? You want to start that, the whole project life cycle one?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, ask questions. Make sure in terms of a demonstration, you can have a knowledge about it. So it's a way you can talk around it to demonstrate that you're aware of how you fit into the project, at what stage you fit into the project, perhaps some of the challenges that might have driven or resulted in further work or a reduction in work scope. And so there's a lot, because you can do just by simply asking questions, and they say knowledge is power, don't they? And so a lot of that, that is a key demonstration that you are on top of the project, and you can see how the dominoes affect and how things fall into place. So you can see how some of the contractual wranglings or challenges might have when the project gets to construction. And so having a good overview of the whole project and the whole project life cycle, especially now, because I might be wrong in this, but it seems to me that more and more projects these days are trying to get an overall awareness of the project up front before, and that whether that's because of carbon, because you can only do something about it because if you tackle it at the beginning of the project, or it's because of the impact on sustainability, or whether it's digital and making sure that you've got the right BIM set up before you start the project. There's a lot more of an appreciation and a lot more thought, I feel, going into projects up front. And so just be inquisitive, ask those questions. It's not just because you're doing one package somewhere down the line that's where you should stay and sit within your box. We need to get projects more transparent, and people, I think, are willing to do that. So I'd absolutely say do ask questions, and it doesn't have to be a long time. It can just be a half-hour chat on the project, and if you're only involved in it for a short period of time, that's not a problem. Typically, there'll be project folders. You should be able to have a look at what's going on. There'll be other reports. be inquisitive, do a bit of self-study, self-learning, because it's investing in your own career, and that would be my suggestions.
Yeah, and also I think it's probably like Mark and I have already said, that you might have done more of this than you think you have, because you may have been involved at concept design, you may have you've been doing designers' risk assessments or all kinds of other things that you've done to where you are having to consider much further down the line on a project that you're not even aware of, because you're not thinking about these words all the time, you're just doing it, you're doing good engineering and good design. So don't forget that too.
Perfect. Thank you both for all the answers you provided. I don't see any other questions in the chat, therefore I think it's time for us to thank again our speakers for the insightful talks and for being with us today. And one more question from Olga again. I think it's for Alison. Again, for those of us who have left the UK, would we have the opportunity to communicate with someone from ICE to check up on our progress at one or two key points along the way?
Yes, there is a membership development officer who looks after, well, there's a few of them who look after other countries. So depending on where you're from, why don't you send me an email, Olga, and I can point you in the right direction. But also, if you join one of the workshops I've mentioned, you'll get contacts and information that way. But ping me an email and I'll help you. alison.jones@icu.org.uk. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you again, Alison and Mark, for being with us today. And yeah, that was all from our end. I hope that all the audience enjoyed the talk. Thank you everyone for being here with us, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, Tina.
Thanks, Tina. Thanks, Alison.
Thanks, Mark.
Mark, thanks everyone. Thanks, Jones.